lots and lots of people standing by the announcement board, waiting to see their trains come up. And I'm waiting for one as well because I'm going to Jodrell Bank. Now, it's the UK's largest radio telescope. So, of course, you may be thinking, what has this got to do with a plant story? But trust me, it does have something to do with a plant story. Of course it does. Ow! Sorry. That's a bit feeble. By the end of this, I really won't mind being stung. Ooh! Okay, Sam is now disappearing into the undergrowth. I think I'm actually standing on a stinging nettle. Ow! This really is incredibly overgrown. Welcome to Our Plant Stories. It's a podcast where we share our stories about plants. In the beginning, I would find those stories, but increasingly listeners, in this case Sam Turner, are bringing their own stories, which we tell together. I have never before gone through so many nettles to bring you a plant story, and I was wearing trousers. Sam was wearing shorts, but you don't hear her complaining. But we start parked in a lay-by not far from the Jodrell Bank telescope. In fact, we passed the telescope on the way here, and the overgrown field in front of us was once the lawn of a botanical research station belonging to Manchester University. We've come here to search for gooseberry bushes. Sam has been researching this site, and we think there was a big collection of bushes here in the early 80s, maybe even a national collection. So we call Liz Edwards, Conservation Advisor at the charity Plant Heritage, which back in the 80s was called NCCPG. Does their archive tell us anything?
Hi, Sally.
Hello, hi. Hi, Liz, how are you?
The reference in 1986 was that this is an existing collection, and the collection holder is writing to NCCPG to ask for permission to relocate the collection from one location attached to Manchester University to the Granada Arboretum.
Sam, does that mean anything to you with the dates that you've done?
That sounds about right, because 1986 was when there was funding issues at the University of Manchester and they closed the botany department in 1986. So it sounds like they defunded the Jodrell Bank botanical site at that time. And then there was this Granada Arboretum around that time, which I think is run under the Jodrell Bank umbrella rather than the university. So it was probably a change of ownership due to the money aspect of it, the financing.
Liz, thank you for going down the gooseberry rabbit hole that Sam and I are very definitely down at the moment. And I feel you've just joined us, actually.
Yeah, no, it's really nice.
Well, we're going in, so we will definitely let you know if we find anything.
Lovely. Have a fabulous time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.
So, 40 years on from that closure of the Botanical Research Station, could any of the bushes once grown on this abandoned site still be here? So Sam, I'm going to give you that, which I think if you leaf through it, that's got the map. If you kind of go to the back of that, we've got the maps, all the pictures that you sent through.
So that's the access road there. And the lawn we're looking at is that bit, I believe, if I'm getting correct. And I think if you go, you can see from the road these buildings, which are just outbuildings, and I think these are the greenhouses over here. And I think E was where they had the collection at some point. But I think that is just part of this field now. But
Fabulous, let's go.
Let's go and have a look.
Looking to see if she can... that doesn't look hopeful. Ooh. Anything? Ooh! Okay, hang on. I'm coming through. Ooh. I'm attempting to come through. There are so many brambles here, as well as... Bear with, dear listener. I'd just like to tell you that what we are doing, because of this plant story, is it's a little different to some. So while we're in this place, let's stand somewhere we're not being stung.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about the gooseberry story and how we got to be here.
So I started volunteering at the University of Manchester botanical grounds called the Firs, and while I was there, they told me the story of the Jodrell Bank's experimental grounds. It used to be part of the University of Manchester. Well, it still is. It's still owned by the University of Manchester, but it's no longer used as botanical experimental grounds. And basically they told me this story of how it was used before Jodrell Bank became famous for its radio telescopes. The University of Manchester used it for research on plants and crop science, but they also held some collections of unusual plants, botanical collections, and because of the location in central Cheshire, where there's a culture of gooseberry growing, they also had a collection of gooseberries which, as far as I can tell, weren't really used for anything for research purposes, but they were used as a botanical collection, and also just I think it might have been the passion of some of the local growers who worked on the site. So when I spoke to the people at the Firs, they said, well, some of the buildings are still there, even though it's been over 40 years now, and there are still some gooseberries growing wild, and maybe those are some of the original cultivars that were grown on the site, but they weren't sure because they don't know whether they're still there, whether they're wild seedlings or whether they're something that was deliberately planted.
Now, when we started this story, so you mentioned it to me when we were chatting about another story actually about national collections and being a plant guardian, and you just mentioned gooseberries, and you and I are both deeply down a gooseberry rabbit hole right now. But you did research. You researched at Firs, you researched at Rylands. So what did you find there in terms of people who were bothered by the fact that this was a historical collection that needed to be taken care of?
So during the 1970s, the superintendent of the botanical grounds was a guy called Roy Waymont, and he was obviously a plantsman himself. He was interested in the botanical side. He wasn't just a labourer, and he spent a lot of letters to various people regarding the plant heritage, in particular the gooseberries. So I found a letter from 1974 where he contacted Cheshire Life, talking about how he was worried about the fact that nurseries didn't stock as many gooseberries as they did, not as many traditional varieties, and he was worried if they weren't kept alive then they might disappear. So he wrote to the readership basically of Cheshire Life saying, can you send me any unusual cultivars, and here's an issue I think that's developing. And then a few months later he wrote to the professor, which was Professor Valentine, who was the head of the botanical department at Manchester University, and he said maybe we should turn this into some kind of heritage collection, because otherwise we might not be able to find these varieties in future. And we're not sure what happened then, but it certainly looks like in the 1980s a Dr. Benton tried to turn it into a collection by contacting Plant Heritage at the time.
And then it seems what Liz was confirming earlier was that actually there was a national collection here.
Yes.
There's one other person we should talk about, isn't there, whose name kept cropping up when you were doing this research?
Yes, so there's a man called Frank Carter who looks like he was working there from at least the late 60s, and he was noted in the letter from Roy Waymont that he was a competition-winning gooseberry champion of Cheshire, and it looks like he developed a lot of gooseberry cultivars over his lifetime, some of which are now still the top heaviest gooseberries in the Cheshire competitions. So he was obviously not just a gooseberry expert, but quite top of his game, I suppose you would say, in terms of gooseberry growing, because the fact that he's still, after all these years, the top breeder of gooseberries for competition growing. So there's the sort of this hope that somewhere on the site there's something associated with Frank Carter, because while he wasn't a professor or the superintendent himself, he was just a horticultural worker. He was obviously very skilled and very dedicated to what he was doing. And I just think it's very interesting, and I kind of want to keep his story alive as much as anything else.
And he also names one of the cultivars that he grows for Jodrell Bank, correct?
He does, yes. And some of them are named things like Bank View, and they're named after some of the local villages, but there are some that are named after people, and who are they named after? So, like, he was naming them for things in his life, so it's kind of this is part of his life, or it was for at least 15, 20 years he worked here, for as far as I can tell.
It's tantalising. It's tantalising, isn't it? Because it's so overgrown that to kind of find your way through it is quite a challenge, really.
Yes.
What is it about this story that is magical for you? Because I sense there is something about this story.
I think, well, when I research gooseberry competitions and the fact that they go back hundreds of years in this country, particularly the north of England, it's a very local story. And they're more or less on the point of getting to where they're dying out. There's a few left, but the people doing them are generally older. The numbers are dwindling each year. It seemed a bit sort of quaint and British and old-fashioned, and younger people are not getting involved. So after this 200 years of people growing gooseberries, eventually having a national collection, trying to grow like the biggest they can, and people like Frank Carter doing research on them essentially in his spare time as part of a botanical research worker, and then for them all to disappear, it seems like almost a tragedy that this part of like our British heritage that's just, you know, overgrowing, and the plants are, if they're surviving at all, they're sort of naturalised and wild in some little corner of the country. So it's fascinated me, the fact that it's becoming forgotten. It's not yet forgotten, but it's becoming forgotten.
Okay, we're not going to give up quite yet, are we?
No,
we're going to
brave the nettles a bit more.
We're going to wade on in. Okay, I'm going to tie my shoelace before we wade on in. Otherwise, I'm more like to trip into this bed of nettles. So bear with. Oh wow!
Yeah, so we must be about there.
That is a derelict greenhouse.
Yes. If we can just get.
How do we get through to it?
I just soldier on through this. Get my secateurs out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Can I just say, I wish you'd found those secateurs earlier. I would perhaps not been quite so stung as we are. Wow.
There's a light coming through it. I don't know if your phone takes better photos than mine, but that's quite.
Let me take some pictures. That is amazing.
Yeah.
We'd emerged through the undergrowth to see a large, long, derelict greenhouse, still standing with the light streaming through the broken panes. There were plants growing in it and through it. Keeping the greenhouse on our left, we ventured further into the undergrowth, encountering some snail houses on the way, more research needed, and a couple of wild gooseberry bushes entangled in the wire netting. We retraced our steps to the main greenhouse, and this time walked round the other side of it. And it was here we found something. There's some gooseberries. Ow! Here. Oh, yes.
And there's one growing out of there, and it's a bit more.
We found a gooseberry bed.
We found the bed.
Sam, we found a gooseberry bed.
We walked past it before, didn't we?
We did. We walked completely past it. I think we were actually so taken by the derelict greenhouse. And we didn't come round this side, did we? Okay. So we have basically found one, if not, I mean, it wouldn't. If they had 70 cultivars, they'd have had to have had more than this, wouldn't they?
Yes, it looks like that's maybe 20 different kinds at most in there.
There's one label there, and then there's another one down here. And there's another one there, look, it's got number 22 on it.
Okay. So it looks like when they've been winding the site down, at some point they've planted a row or a double row of gooseberries in a raised bed, which has got some concrete slabs around it. And it's about 5 metres, and there's some very tired old gooseberry plants with yellow leaves, with some dirty horticultural labels under them which look like names of gooseberry cultivars. But above them is a layer of very tangled brambles, and above that some young trees that are, you know, forest canopy height now, that have been growing for about 40 years. So the gooseberries are alive, but only just hanging on there. But it's obviously deliberate. Someone's decided to save some here for some reason. There's a little collection.
There were a couple of names we recognised, weren't there? There was, what was the first one you pulled out?
Matchless. And King of Trumps. And something else that was Jenny something, or Johnny maybe. So I think I recognise this as cultivars, but we can check the list when we get out of it. But yeah, someone has decided to save some, and then it's been abandoned for 40 years or so, and they're still living. It's strangely peaceful here, isn't it?
The gooseberry quest will continue in a moment as we find out more about Frank Carter from someone who knew him. But I just wanted to say that in this podcast I strive to bring you not just the plant but the place, hoping that that gets you closer to some of the joy of these stories. However, it takes time and money to get to these places, and this podcast is purely supported by its listeners. So if you're enjoying it, a donation of any size to support the podcast is very welcome. And I use an online platform called Buy Me a Coffee. You won't be supporting my coffee habit, but you will be supporting our plant stories and enabling me to keep making them. You'll find the links to Buy Me a Coffee in the show notes and on the website, ourplantstories.com. Now, back to our quest.
Well, actually, you've surprised me that, because everybody I've asked about there, they said there was no gooseberries at all. So you've surprised me that there's gooseberries up there.
This is Richard Oakhill, a prize-winning gooseberry grower who lives less than 10 minutes from the research station site. Yes. What do you know about Frank?
When I first started growing gooseberries, I went there to get some cuttings. So that's where I got my first cuttings from.
Okay, from the Jodrell Bank site?
No, not from Jodrell Bank. He lived further down. He lived further down, so not far from Jodrell Bank, about 5 minutes at the most.
Okay.
A place he lived was called Blackden, it was called. Anyhow, I went there, and what an helpful man. What a very helpful man. And I says to him, this is about 35 years ago. I says, I'm thinking about starting growing gooseberries, because my father just died, and he was in the show. So he says, right, he says, come with me. And he took me down to his plot and says, right, I've got some cuttings here. You choose whichever one you want. Oh, wow. I says, well, I don't know much about it, Frank. He says, I tell you what, I'll pick some out, and you can have whatever I pick out. And he gave me those.
Oh.
And that was the start of your gooseberry growing?
Yes, yeah. And I used to go and see him after that, because I did get quite a few cuttings off. And I went down once, and when they get really ripe, you've got to cover them. He had a rhubarb. He had, rhubarbs where they have big leaves. He had a rhubarb covering his best ones up, because if they have a lot of rain, when they're nearly ripe, they'll split. So he had a rhubarb. I have got a list of here of all Frank grew.
Oh, wonderful.
Right. You've got Lord Montgomery, that is, Prince Charles, Blackden Gem, Just Betty. That Just Betty, his mother was called Betty.
Oh, there we go.
He didn't know what to name it, and he says to his mother, he says to his mother, what should I call it? She says, Betty. And Frank says, Just Betty. So that's why he's called Just Betty.
It's a lovely story.
Christine,
yeah.
Montrose, Woodside, Roots, Jodrell White, Bank View, Crystal, Belmarsh, Millennium. Frank, to name a tree yourself, you've got to grow a gooseberry over 25 pennyweights, 2 years on the trot, or 2 years. If it doesn't grow over 25 pennyweights, you cannot name that tree, that bush, that tree. So he grew these over, each one of them, he grew 2 years over 25 pennyweights.
Okay.
Nowadays, then you see there's 26 growers there. Gooseberry only got about 15 now.
Yeah.
Young people don't want to get into it, which is a shame, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been discussing that it feels like it's a dying art, and it's such a lot of work has gone into it for 200 years odd of gooseberry growing in the UK. So.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel when you see the numbers dropping?
Well, it's sad, really, because say young people are not interested in growing gooseberries, because there's other things to do, isn't there? Like computers, which is sad, really. They should be getting outside, doing a bit of gardening and growing berries, or even growing fruit and veg. But you don't get that anymore. gardens round here are only tiny, so there's no room for, years ago you used to have, when we had big gardens round here, you had room to grow gooseberries and other vegetables. Nowadays, they don't. They don't bother with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get young people come in our show. They might show, they'd be 13, 14, which we allow them in if that's small, that young. And then they just, when they reach 17, 18, just drift away. Not interested anymore.
Yeah, it's a
Other
shame.
things to do. It is a shame. We try to get members every year. It's very hard to get people to want to grow. I think at the moment we've only got 10 members in our, 12 members in our show. 12.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work going in growing big gooseberries, because you get all sorts of things. You get mildew, you get green fly, you get mice, you get birds. And mice are buggers for eating, sorry about the language, but they're buggers for getting in your pen. And you can go in one day and there's a lot around on a tree. You go in the next day and they pile, you can see 6 around the bottom of the tree where they've taken them all off. They haven't eaten them, but they've taken them all off and they go and store them for later. And blackbirds are another thing. If they get in,
They're gone.
yeah.
Do you cook with them? Do you eat them?
I don't like them. I'll eat them when they're tarty, when they're not ripe. You get these ripe gooseberries we grow. You get them as heavy as you can with enough juice in them, which gives you the weight, so they're really ripe. I don't like them like that. I'll eat them when they're a bit bitter, but I won't eat them. And the wife never cooks with them. But people used to do. People used to make gooseberry fool and all things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think if we were to come back here in 10 years' time, say, the shows will still be here?
That's an hard one to say. I would say yes, the show, but it might be all one big show. All the pubs and where the shows are, they'll probably sooner or later they're going to get together and just have one big show. Especially if people keep dropping. I'm not being rude or anything. People keep dying. Most of your growers now are old people, and they fall off the perch. You see, don't? Well, they do. I'm afraid to say that.
Yeah.
But I bet you're losing 10 members a year, or because there's quite a few. But if you're losing 10 members a year, you can't afford to do that.
No. I think we are definitely ready for how to grow, aren't we?
Yes,
really,
we
because
are.
I think if you're not wanting to grow gooseberries at the end of this episode, then you've got no soul.
Yes.
Richard took us to see a friend's gooseberry patch. Sam, what's the questions you want answered by Richard?
Well, yeah. So you've covered them, obviously, to stop them being eaten by birds. What do you do for feeding them? Because that must be quite significant. You must have to put a lot of feed on them to get big ones.
Yes, you do. And people won't give secrets away.
Okay,
Put
right.
it that way. It's very secretive. You ask a member what he puts on his tree, on his bushes, he will not tell you.
Okay.
Or on his trees, he will not tell you what he's putting on them.
Okay, so you have to experiment yourself.
Experiment yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not going to tell you what I put on mine.
Okay.
Because if people find out what I'm putting on mine, they might use it, you see.
I see. Yeah.
Me winning it 7 years on the trot, people might think, well, I'm going to use that this year. And they might beat me.
I see.
Any kind of general hints, towards anything that could be kind of generic to everyone?
You've got to stop on getting mildew.
Right.
Because mildew marks the gooseberries. And once the gooseberries are marked, once it rains on them, they split quite easily.
Right.
So you've got to spray for mildew on a regular. I spray every 10 days to keep mildew off mine. So that's one rule. Sawfly, which is little caterpillars, they'll if you don't spot it, you can leave a tree for a week, and if you get sawfly, which is a little green caterpillar, they can take all the leaves off them completely.
So you need to check them daily.
You've got to check for them daily, because same say you can go away for 2 days and it can wipe wipe a tree out.
So basically, you can't go away if you've tried
Well,
to grow
you
prize
can
winning
do,
gooseberries.
but you take your pot luck then, you see, don't you?
Well, you go away in August when you've
after
had the shows.
That's when I go away for an holiday, after the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions?
They're covered at the moment because of the hot weather, I take it?
They're covered to try and keep wasps out, to keep birds out, the hot weather as well. You don't want a lot of hot weather. But if you get a lot of wasps, you've got to cover them completely. The sides, the top, everything. Because wasps can go in. I've known members that have wasps and they've not shown a gooseberry that year.
Right. So wasps, birds,
Yeah.
sawfly.
Yeah, mice.
Mice, okay.
Yes.
So they're basically in Fort Knox.
At this time of year, yeah. But in the winter you got to cover them up sometimes. Because you get tomticks or sparrows going in, pecking the buds out.
Okay.
Once them buds are pecked out, if you've pruned them, once them buds are pecked out, you're not getting a berry.
Right.
See, these he's let grow. He's
Oh,
let grow.
yes. Yeah. They're
He
much...
doesn't show these,
No.
so he's just letting grow. So he'll use them for eating.
Okay.
So they're a bush. They're not a tree. So like these, you see, they're probably the sort of gooseberries you buy, are they?
Yeah. This is the kind of gooseberry I saw.
Yeah.
Can I eat this one?
Looks a bit.
You can do. Let me see if I can get a better one.
That looks a bit withered. That one.
There's a better one you can try.
Oh, great. Fabulous. Okay, so this is a red one.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah. Sweet, isn't it? Yeah.
That is so sweet.
Would you like to try one?
I'll have to try
Oh.
one, yeah, if you don't mind.
That is delicious. I didn't expect that. I thought it'd be much more tart.
Usually you need a bit of sugar on them if you're cooking them. to
That
make
doesn't...
them-
Well, those are amazing. Sam would like to track down the cultivars that Frank bred. Jodrell Bank, Montrose, Prince Charles, with the dream of maybe one day putting together a historical collection of Frank Carter's gooseberries. So I'll put the list of the cultivars that Frank bred on the website, along with some gooseberry recipes, with thanks to a previous Our Plant Stories guest, Kathy Slack. The website, ourplantstories.com, is also where you can sign up for the newsletter, which means you will never miss an episode because you will receive it in your inbox on the day I publish it. A half-hour fix of plants in your day. With thanks to Sam and Richard and Liz for telling this story. And if you have a plant story that you'd like to share, you can email me, sally@ourplantstories.com.